Hey everyone, welcome back to Chat Sematary. I'm your host, Deanna Chapman, and today I am joined by Becky Rice in person.
Woo woo.
Sitting on my couch. She is sitting on the couch, I am not.
I'm on the couch.
And we just watched Mr. Harrigan's Phone. Becky, how are you feeling?
It's weird to be doing this in person. Have you ever recorded any of these episodes in person, Deanna?
I sure have not.
Oh my gosh. I love to be the first. This rocks.
We almost did an in-person episode of Welcome to Geekdom.
Was that for the Batman?
Yeah.
It was too complicated.
It was too complicated for me to fly with microphones and stuff.
But now you live down the street.
Now I live down the street.
From me, not from the Batman.
Yeah.
Just for clarification in case anybody was confused.
So we just watched the movie. Mm-hmm. It's on Netflix.
It is.
We have not discussed how either of us feel about it yet.
We haven't. I actually thought about telling you that we should each log our reviews on Letterboxd without speaking to one another about what we thought about the film. And then look at them right before recording. But I think that maybe this is better. We're going in having not spoken about it at all.
Yeah, and it's my fault because I was very hungry and I literally just shoveled food in my face and was like, all right, let's go.
That's okay. We're trying a new format today, folks.
Yes, we are. But this movie has a pretty small cast.
It
pretty
does.
small.
It does. There's not really a lot of like speaking characters. I mean, I guess
there's lots of extras.
There are a lot of extras. There are a lot of main town folk. But in the story itself, right, because it's a short story. It's not like a novella or a 7,000 page novel like your typical Stephen King fare.
Yeah.
So there's not really a lot of time to get attached to characters, which I think is why I like I like when Stephen King writes a short story. If anybody remembers me from previous episodes, one of which is actually the collection of If It I know what it is. I was trying to think of what to call it. But I, previously did the episode for If It Bleeds. And this story is actually the first story in that. And if I remember correctly, it was the one that both of us retained the most information from and I think enjoyed the best out of that collection. And so I was a little bit surprised to see it being turned into a movie, but also not that surprised because Netflix has kind of done some other Netflix original films off of some Stephen King works. I know the sexy one, Gerald's Game. That one's good. That one was really good.
Yeah.
That one was really good. I thought it was a really good adaptation.
It's fantastic.
I like that story. I like the movie. The corn one. There's one with corn.
Oh, in the tall grass?
Yeah. It's not corn. It's grass. Okay.
It is a field that very much looks like it's just a different version of Children of the Corn, but in the tall grass is a story he wrote with his son Joe Hill.
Yes. That one was fine. It was on the good side of fine. It was fine plus.
I didn't love it, but
I think I liked it, but I didn't think
it's a weird one.
I didn't think too much about it. I don't remember anything about it, but I think that I was like, this is a little bit better than fine. Here's the thing, folks. I'm not a Stephen King expert. And if you've ever heard me on this podcast, you might think that I don't like Stephen King at all. And I am also questioning that myself recently with Deanna. But I think I'm doing a pretty good job here. Deanna, what's the other one? There's another one. There's another King Netflix movie.
1922.
Yeah, that
with
one.
Thomas Jane.
Yeah, I did not watch that one. I don't think.
I think that one was fine. Gerald's Game is by far the best of them so far. And I think a lot of that has to do with you and I both love a lot of what Mike Flanagan has done.
Who is that? I know who that is.
Haunting of Hill House, Haunting of Bly Manor. He did all of those. Dr. Sleep, maybe to a lesser extent for you, but
I didn't like it.
I liked Dr. Sleep, so
I don't care for or about Dr. Sleep as a book, and so I think that had a lot to do with me not liking the movie.
Yes, probably.
Also, the score is overpowering in that movie, but that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, but on the note of the cast.
Oh, I would love to talk about Dr. Sleep, though. I really would, because I don't like it. I feel like I'm always coming on this podcast to be like, let me tell you what I don't like about Stephen King.
But Jada Martell obviously returning to Stephen King from It.
Oh, the Knives Out kid.
Yes, also the Knives Out kid.
Yeah, it's okay. Oh, he is. He's oh my gosh, yeah, he is the kid from It.
Yeah.
When we were watching,
He's Bill.
Yeah, I know that now. I knew it before. I just wasn't thinking about it. And when I was watching, I was like, I know this kid. I've seen this kid, and I was Knives Out. And then I was done. I just like checked out. The thing about me is that like, and I think Deanna, you're gonna say that this is not true because you saw me taking notes during this, and also when we did the episode for Bly Manor and Haunting of Hill House. Actually, Haunting of Hill House, I can't remember if this happened this way because I think I had just already seen it. I didn't watch it for the podcast. I'd already seen it, and then we did the episode. But Bly Manor, we kind of were texting each other back and forth as we were watching it. And so I think that that I was like taking notes as I was doing it, and you saw me taking notes during this. But I try really hard to like not be on my phone or like look at things. You've been to the movies with me or watched other things. I try to just like immerse myself in the environment that the film wants me to be in, which is why I'm easily spooked at the cinema when I'm watching a scary movie, which is going to bring me to, I think, my first complaint about this is that it's not scary.
Yeah, the story felt way more intense than I think watching this felt, because it also skipped over some stuff. Like towards the beginning of the story, I think his dad was like more concerned about this relationship that was budding between him and Mr. Harrigan, and was like making sure nothing inappropriate was happening to his son. And that just like does not happen here.
Yeah, that part gets kind of like tossed out. Like the only real mention of any concern about it is that he's like, oh, like if your mother were still alive, she would, be rolling in her grave, that I was letting you kind of like hang around Mr. Harrigan. Was Mr. Harrigan's first name Mr.?
John,
I
think is what he said.
Yeah, he says John Harrigan. He doesn't call him Mr. Harrigan. And you kind of understand, like, okay, like he doesn't have the best reputation. He's kind of like a seedy business guy. And so that kind of makes sense. And then that's it. I think I had forgotten that you, or that was even a part of the story until you mentioned it. But now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, like there was a lot more concern for that. And so like you as a reader are kind of like, okay, are these questions being asked because this is something that I'm like gonna need to be worried about later?
Yeah.
And so there's just that like extra like anxiety there that just doesn't exist here. I don't want to dig too much into like the plot quite yet because I know that we're going to do that here in a second. But yeah, I just feel like each time like something happened, I don't want to say what's going to I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But it just, can we just get into spoiler territory?
Yeah, here's your spoiler warning, everyone. So if you have not seen it, pause, go watch it. It's on Netflix. I know most of you have Netflix or know someone who has Netflix. Go watch it. Carry on.
Okay. Carrie, that's a great book, a great movie. Okay.
One great movie.
If we, but if we Mr. Harrigan's phone on, it's funny because like his phone stays on. That was not intentional. Every time like there's a text message that he receives from, beyond the grave, or like a person dies, or, some type of like ramification happens in the book, even if it's not a death that's caused by like this supernatural connection. I feel like in the book, it felt very tense and you're just like, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened. Or like, oh my God, like that was real. Or things felt like jarring. And then in this, it just felt like, and then that's what happened.
Yeah. It was like, no big deal. Okay, on to the next thing. And it just felt like the stakes didn't feel as high in the movie as they did in the book, because there was a point during the movie where you were like, I think this happens. to someone. I don't remember who, but I remember this thing that happened. And I was like, I don't know. I don't really remember. I've probably read a little bit more King than you have since If It Bleeds came out.
I don't think I've read any King since If It Bleeds came out. That's not true because I read the graphic novel adaptation of Sleeping Beauties.
I'm so sorry. That was only the first half of it, though.
I know. A book which I really thought that I had liked until I read the graphic novel, and then I was like, oh, maybe I didn't like this story as much as I remembered. I still like the story a lot, just some of the details of it. I'm like, oh, I don't like the way that was done.
Yeah.
I think that Stephen King peaked in his first 4 novels, and then it has just been a spiral ever since then. But you know what? I haven't read all of his books. Wait, are those the first? Those also might not be the first 4. What are the first 4?
Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Dead Zone, and Firestarter, I think. Unless you want to count Night Shift in there, which is a short story collection.
No, okay. I feel like I was right. What's the 5th one?
I'm actually wondering if I'm right now. I think
2 of those are for sure correct.
The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining is... I thought that was one of the first 4.
Maybe it's The Shining and then Firestarter.
I
always get them mixed up. Real quick, everyone, I realized while I was editing this that we definitely did not mention The Stand, so this is me just putting that little correction in right here for you all.
Okay, I feel very confident and comfortable saying that Stephen King peaked with his first 4 novels and that he has had some occasional wins in there. And for all of you who are going to come attack me on the internet, the thing is that it is good to have people with diverse opinions in close to you. And I haven't read as much as you have, Deanna, but I feel pretty strongly that his first 4 works are his best 4 works. And I don't think anyone that's a fan of him would argue with me about that. People might say, you think that there are people who wouldn't say that The Shining and Carrie and Salem's Lot are his 3 of his best books? That's absurd.
Only one of those is in my top 5, so.
What else is in your top 5? Dreamcatcher?
No, Pet Cemetery.
Dreamcatcher sucks.
I really liked Later. I don't know if I
have
would put that
literally
top 5.
never heard of that.
It's his most recent book.
Oh, it's one of the later ones.
Thank you for that. It's one of his last 3 books as of right now.
What's the one with the spooky house, the haunted house? There's it's like a carnival. It's like a fun house.
Also, I really love Christine, but anyway.
Oh, that one's good. That one's good. And she's on the cover. There's a woman on the cover, and she's looking at something.
I really wish I knew what you were talking about, but I don't have any of my Stephen King books here with me, except for Fairy Tale.
I think it's red. Joyland? Joyland? It's not red, but
there is a woman on that cover and a spooky house going on. Yes.
And it's kind of red toned. I liked that one.
That one's also good.
See, I've read some Stephen King books. I don't know why I feel like I have to explain, I know what I'm talking about. Here's the thing. I really like when Stephen King scares me.
Mm-hmm.
Or does something, even if it's not scary, that it's unnerving. And the premise of this story is incredibly silly. It's incredibly silly. Some of the details about how it actually happens are just bizarre and would not happen that way. That being said, I feel like this movie could have very leaned into either being silly and funny and or leaned in on being really scary and startling. And the tone of it just feels so off. I wasn't scared reading this story, but I was unnerved. And I was always, on edge. And oh my God, I can't believe that happened. But at no point in time did I have that type of connection with it as a movie.
Yeah, King is really good at stressing you out.
Yes.
Without necessarily having to scare you. And you mentioned Gerald's Game earlier. That is one of the most stressful stories I think that King has ever written because of the circumstances. And this, once he figures out what's going on with Mr. Harrigan's phone, everything just feels heightened and more intense and stressful. And you don't really get that with the movie, which is a bummer because I really wanted to be like stressed out while watching this, which I know is a weird thing to say.
No, I agree. I'm a huge fan of like horror and thrillers and suspense for that exact reason, you know? Like I want to sit in something and I want to like have a feeling and I want that feeling to be like stressful and like make me anxious and then to like just like let it go, you know, at the resolution. And it's a very straightforward adaptation of
for the most part
of the story. Like
it mostly leaves stuff out.
It doesn't change
changing things.
Yeah, it didn't change anything. It left a couple things out. I don't think, other than like setting like an unnerving tone at the very beginning, I don't know that I think anything that got left out like took away from the film. I think it's more just like the adaptation was great. I think it's either direction or like editing. Like it just, the tone is just odd. Like it's literally just like you're being like, here's an account of some events that happened.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about how you felt about the narration, because narration is very hit or miss with me. Like when Morgan Freeman is doing it in The Shawshank Redemption, it works.
It's so good.
When Rob Lowe is doing it in the 2004 Salem's Lot TV miniseries, not good.
Have not seen. I love Rob Lowe, and I don't think that he did anything wrong, and I think you're making that up. The narration in this, I think, was my first note, actually, that I wrote, which should not be that weird because it starts at the very beginning, and it's only ever at the very beginning.
There's a little throughout.
No.
Yeah.
Was there?
Yeah. Like when he was sitting at the table one of the times, and he was, I don't remember what exactly he was doing, but then there was some more narration that came in about like kind of how he was spending his time and like when he was walking down the hallway at school.
Oh, yeah, okay. I guess there is more.
It's not a lot.
It didn't feel weird or jarring to me the stuff later then. And it's because the voice that you're hearing and the face that you're seeing match.
Yeah, but when it's young Craig and then older Craig doing the narration, it was a little disjointed.
But it should have been an even older Craig. Mm-hmm. This might be my own interpretation and just like what I had collected when I was reading the story. But in my mind, he was well post-college narrating it and now looking back on things. There is
kind of like in The Body.
Yes. There's absolutely nothing in this story that like sets that up for you or like implies that in any way whatsoever. But nothing about it made me like, I don't know, just when I was reading it and it like sets it up at the very beginning of the story and he's like, hey, so like here's some, you know, I'm going to tell you this story about these things that happened to me and that's kind of like how I think about life now. It didn't feel like it was him talking to me like a few days after all these events had happened to him when he was in college. It felt like he was like, you know, like not super far removed, but maybe like in his like 30s or something, like kind of like reflecting upon like this thing that had happened to him. And then it pivots to his point of view as like a child and then as a teenager and then as a college student. Whereas this is like, it's just narrated by him, the same voice and face that he has as like a high schooler and as a college student. And I didn't really love that. I thought that was an odd choice. I feel like you also had an issue with that, and that's why you brought it up.
Yeah, it was just kind of weird. I don't love it when movies start with narration in general, especially the way this one did. It was just like, here's a day. And I was like, okay.
Well, no, because he's like, I wish I could remember, like, he's like, he gives like the Oscar Wilde quote and he's like, but we didn't read that story when I was in school. Maybe we should have. And it doesn't feel like warning. The way it's delivered is just so flat.
Yeah.
That I almost missed that, like, the implication of it is like, if I had heard this quote and read this story, I might have made different choices in my life. You know, you completely like miss that because of the way that it's delivered.
I forgot what it was like 10 seconds after it happened.
Yeah. And then he just jumps right into like, you know, the whole way I even met Mr. Harrigan was, you know, from church. And then it just like, like in
takes you to that day.
And takes you to that day, you know, where he's reading from the Bible at church. This is not me not knowing what the Bible is. This is me not remembering what happened in the movie. I believe he's reading a passage of scripture from the Bible.
That's what I figured.
And I don't know, like,
I mean, I'm not familiar with anything that's in the Bible pretty much, so I couldn't tell you like what exactly he was reading. But he left with a book after he was done reading, so I assumed it was the Bible since he was in church.
Oh, I don't know. I'm a Jew, and we have a lot of books that are not the Torah. In fact, if we're reading from a book, it's not the Torah because that isn't a scroll. So whenever I watch church things, I'm just like, I have no idea what's happening, unless it's in the first 4 books. And I'm like, I know those. But yeah, he reads it, and he does like an okay job. And afterwards, Mr. Harrigan comes to the house where he lives with his father, and is like, oh, hey, like, you know, I want to talk to your boy. And he, you know, offers Craig this opportunity to come read to him 3 days a week for $5 an hour because he's now starting to lose his eyesight, and cannot really read very well on his own anymore. And then that's how this relationship starts. And he has him reading some like stuff, man. Like, and that makes it sound like I think it's crap, and I don't think it's crap. Heart of Darkness is like probably one of my favorite books of all time.
It's good.
He has him read like that as like a child. And then he's like reading it again, like when he's older, and he's like, oh, I didn't think I understood this when I was younger. And like, now this is what I'm taking from it. He has him reading like The Jungle, which like, I think is really just to showcase that Mr. Harrigan is like a piece of shit capitalist, who does not give a shit about other people's well-being, and only cares about like maximizing his own personal profit at the expense of others, just based on the way that he talks about the book. Yeah, he's reading some like good stuff over there.
It's funny because as soon as it had him reading Crime and Punishment, I was like, oh, that's the one book I never finished in high school, and I just never revisited it.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I love Crime and Punishment. So I actually I made a note in that part because he says, oh yes, I do enjoy the occasional bleak Russian novel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was really funny because it felt like something that I would say. Not necessarily about Dostoevsky, but maybe about like Nabokov. Yeah. I'm a weirdo.
It's funny because like in high school, I did not want to read at all.
Really?
Which I understand is a wild thing to say as I am sitting here having read every single Stephen King book.
I feel like this episode is more about us like learning about each other than it is about the movie, and that's honestly fine. Deanna, were you a reader as a child? I'm interviewing you now.
I mean, I had books, and I read all the Harry Potter books.
You're like, I knew how to read.
I had a bunch of like Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys books, and I read those. But I think my issue was I didn't like being forced to read something, which is why I did not do well with like English class in school unless it was a project where they were like, pick what you read.
But then you forced yourself to read 5,000 books that are 600 pages long. How about them apples?
Here's the thing. Before I started this podcast, I had already read a few Stephen King books. So I at least had the general idea that I would like reading the rest of the Stephen King books. And there's only been a handful that I didn't like, to be fair, out of everything he's done.
Right. Like there's
Most
some
of them
that you've liked.
fine to good.
Like there's some that you've liked better than others, but.
Right. And I would say the obvious ones I didn't like. Tommy Knocker's Dreamcatcher. I
read both of those. They both suck.
I disliked Sleeping Beauties.
I thought that I liked it.
Which is fine.
I'm not going to reread it. It's too big.
It is very big. And like those were the only 3 I feel like I actively disliked. So that's not bad out of however many he has. It's like 80 now.
That's true. I don't know. For me, like if I walk away from like an 800-page novel and I'm like, it was fine, I'm like, I hated that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's that too.
But I don't know that I would say that like I hate like a lot of Stephen King books. Like I feel like for the most part, the ones that I've read, I've really liked, with very similar exceptions to the ones that you have, right? Like Tommyknocker's god awful. I did not read another Stephen King book for a very long time after reading that. I only read it because I saw it at the thrift store, which is exactly why it was there. Somebody threw that trash out. And I was like, oh, this is a Stephen King book I've never read. And then I did not touch the stuff again. It's like having like a bad trip. And you're just like, oh, yeah. And then that was the last time I did drugs for years. It took some real big convincing to get me to go back. And I don't remember what got me to go back. I wish I did. But yeah, oof, not good. This, again, though, it's not bad. It's just
fine.
It's fine. The movie, though, I just feels so hollow.
And it's really disappointing because, like, you got Donald Sutherland. And it feels like he just kind of went to waste.
He's just there.
Like, we all know he's very good at his job.
Mm-hmm.
They made him less good at it in this.
It doesn't feel like there's any like spirit or soul or like heart in this. It's just straight up like, here you go. I think that a lot of King adaptations fall victim to this, or this thing happens where just Stephen King's name being on something is this like automatic like check, basic. Like it's just like, okay, cool. Like go make, oh, you want to adapt Stephen King? Go for it.
Oh, you want to do Children of the Corn for the 11th time? That's fine.
But the thing that is like mind-boggling to me is he was a producer on this.
I kind of feel like at this point in his career, he just gets that for being Stephen King. I don't think he actually ever, like, because usually King's thing is that he has cameos. Too. He's had cameos in a lot of his adaptations.
Yeah, not all of them, but a lot of them.
And I feel like if he had been on set for this, for instance, he would have been like someone at the funeral or something, you know? So I feel like even though he was a producer, I don't know how hands-on he would have been with this.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess like a producer's job is very vague in a lot of ways, right? Like
usually it's like executive producers who kind of just get the title, and I wasn't paying attention when the credits rolled.
I wasn't either, but still,
this,
right?
but,
like
yeah.
The planning and the coordination and maybe even like a hand in casting, which is he a producer on it in any capacity?
Think the Muschettis did most of the legwork on that with casting and stuff too.
I was just curious because like it is interesting to me.
But he is in that.
Yes. But it's interesting to me that Bill, what is that kid's name? I'm just going to call him Bill. Don't worry about it. That Bill is Craig in this, right? I think that this will be fine because like he's going to get older and he's not going to be like a kid forever. But I don't want to see him fall into this trap of like, I'm the kid in the Stephen King movies.
This isn't the first time that's happened either. Like I think someone else from one of the It movies was also in another Stephen King adaptation. Oh yeah, the kid who plays
the
Mike.
Stranger Things kid, not Stranger Kid thing.
No, not Finn. But the kid who plays Mike in the It movies, the recent ones, he was in
Mike
Castle
Flanagan.
Rock.
Castle Rock.
Yeah, the Hulu anthology show. Based on various Stephen King novels, not based on any one novel.
Dead Zone is set. No. Isn't it?
I mean, a lot of stuff is set in Castle Rock.
Pretty sure it is. Pretty sure Dead Zone is set there.
Part of it.
Yeah. I'm just flexing my knowledge. Very good book.
Very good movie.
The movie is good.
Not good TV show.
Did not watch the TV show. If you're punishing yourself, you were indulging in too much of what you love.
Hey, at least I stopped at the third Children of the Corn movie.
I'm glad that you cut yourself off for those, but I also feel like your podcast is a lie. because you didn't watch them all. But I feel like at one point they like stray so far from like the light. And become
2 and 3 have nothing to do with the short story even.
Yeah, like they just become like their own thing. Like, that like, do you really?
3 takes place in Chicago.
Yeah, where there's so much corn.
So much corn. Yeah, I mean, I'm not upset that we watched this. I wish it was better.
I'm not upset that I watched it, but like I absolutely could have done without that. Like, I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, and I think because of how we felt about the story and the fact that I don't really remember the other stories in that collection. I mean, I know If It Bleeds was one of the stories in the If It Bleeds collection, but otherwise I vaguely remember like the other 2 stories that round out the 4. And I'm just like, this one stood out the most. I don't know if it's because he's done this before, like he did with Apt Pupil, where it's like young boy meets older man. That one obviously much weirder than this one.
Yeah.
Much less favorable outcome. Even though this doesn't have like the best stuff happening in it. There's a lot of death in this.
I mean, there's only 3.
There's like 5.
Okay, Mr. Flanagan.
I'm leaving that in.
It's good. You should, because I was thinking about Mike Flanagan, because I have something else to say about that, and I don't want to forget it. But Mr. Harrigan dying. Ugh. Now I'm going to call him Mike. Mr. Harrigan dying. I'm not counting because that's not like.
It's still a death.
Yeah, but okay, fine. So Mr. Harrigan dies of natural causes, aka being old.
His mom dies, but it's before the movie opens.
Were you counting that?
No.
Okay, cool.
But it's something he's dealing with still.
Yes, I meant us. Things that we're dealing with as viewers. So there's those 2. The bully. The teacher.
The guy
that killed the teacher. That's 3. Who else dies?
I mean, that's 4. But if you don't want to count Mr. Harrigan, that's fine.
Literally already forgotten the point that I was making. Oh. There's only 3 deaths in it.
We'll go with that.
3, maybe 5. And like, they just felt very like passed over, like rushed, and like nothing in them seems or feels very gruesome necessarily.
Yeah, because 1, we don't see most of them happen.
No, you just hear about them.
We do get like a glimpse of the car accident, but not the accident part actually happening.
When I was reading the book, I gasped at that part because I was just so upset, because like I knew he was going to be upset, but then I also knew that I was like, oh my gosh, I bet you he's going to get his phone back out, like, and he's going to contact.
Yeah, like I said, everything
Mike Flanagan
in the story itself was just like so much better at getting a reaction from, it sounds like, both of us while we were reading it. Versus this, we both kind of just sat here. We laughed a few times at a couple things.
Yeah.
But that was it. And like, I've watched enough movies with you now to know that you react to movies while you are watching them, especially horror movies.
Yeah, even if I don't think that they're very good. Like,
and I don't know if I can even call this a horror movie.
It's not.
It's a thriller, I guess.
No, it's not. I was not thrilled.
I just mean technically speaking. I don't know what genre this would be. Like,
boring drama.
There we go.
I was not thrilled. I was not horrified. I was not spooked in any way. Like, I didn't feel anything.
It was too bright too. Like the like it was always daytime, and like, I don't know if that was the case in the story necessarily.
It's an odd choice. Like, give me some cloud coverage or something. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's like it was dark when he got beat up outside at the dance
in the well-lit parking lot.
Yeah, where there was conveniently a van parked for the kid to throw him against. Could have been catering for the dance. We'll just go with it. But
sure.
Whatever. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't hit the way I wanted it to. But I don't even know what else to say about it. But I know you said you had a Mike Flanagan thing you wanted to say.
It wasn't that I wanted to say it. It's that I have been in my brain ever since you said, we like Mike Flanagan. And I was like, who? And you were like, here's some examples of things that he's done that I know that you like. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that guy. It's because I don't know the difference between Mike Flanagan and Ryan Murphy, who is my enemy.
I'm slightly offended by that.
You know,
I'm offended for Mike Flanagan.
I have trouble with people's names.
I mean, that's fair because they kind of run in not necessarily the same circles, but
sort of similar, right? Like they've both done like anthology series that are meant to be like frightening. Is Ryan Murphy associated with this in any way?
I don't think so.
So the only reason he was in my brain is because I don't know the difference between him and Mike Flanagan. But that's why I was thinking about him earlier. It's because I was trying to be like, he's not the American Horror Story guy, is he?
Mike Flanagan is not. Ryan Murphy is.
Yeah, I know that. But that's why when I was still in the middle of trying to figure out the difference between the two of them and who had done what. You know those little like shape sorting games when you're little, and it's like one thing is in the shape, the hole is the shape of a cube or a square, and the other one is like a circle. And so you're like, you know that the spheres go in the circle and the cubes go in the square, but you have to figure out which ones are cubes and which ones are spheres. That's what I was doing, and I was like putting them into buckets, and then you asked me a question, and then I called Mr. Harrigan Mr. Flanagan.
Amazing.
I could have said Ryan Murphy. Because then when Ryan Murphy dies, I knew you would have been really confused.
Do you have anything else about Mr. Harrigan's phone? I think we're both fairly disappointed, unfortunately.
I know that I talked about this when we talked about the story, but like I just absolutely hate that it's connected to the phone itself. That like somehow for some reason
it's that specific phone.
It's that specific phone, and it wouldn't just text the number. That being said, I am currently thinking about this now, so I might be changing my opinion on this, but I'm wondering if the reason for like the deep connection there is because this is the phone that he had when Mr. Harrigan died. Like he had the phone on him. Mr. Harrigan was in the process of calling Craig as he was dying. And so like when he gets there, like his dead thumb kind of like moves a little bit forward. And completes the action of calling him, which is what he was in the middle of trying to do. So like maybe that has something to do with it. Mm-hmm. Or the fact that like he bought the phone with the money he won and on the scratch off ticket. Wait, no, he didn't. No, he didn't because his dad bought him the phone. So yeah, I had to have just.
He did because he said
he bought Mr. Harrigan's phone with the scratch off money.
Yes,
his phone he already had.
Right. His dad gifted him his phone, and then he bought Mr. Harrigan the same phone. And I'm wondering if it's because it was the same phone, and then once he upgraded too. It was a different kind of iPhone.
I guess. I don't know. I've always thought of Stephen King as a very intelligent person. Even when it comes to like modern issues or like technology, right? Like, you know, like
he's been more progressive than a lot of authors his age.
Yeah. Like he like keeps up with what's going on. And so it just felt like very odd.
Yeah.
To me that, I don't know. I'm thinking like way too much about that. But like that's the type of thing that like I love, like, you know, falling into this like hole of and it just, I don't know. It doesn't hit for me.
Yeah. It's kind of disappointing.
It was. I wanted it to be better because I think that there's just like there's too many not great adaptations of King's works, and it's not a bad story, you know, and I think that this could have been really good. It's just the tone is just really odd.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And having watched all of the Netflix adaptations of King stuff, I would definitely say Gerald's Game is like far and away the best of the few of them.
Oh, for sure. And I've seen all but one of them, and I would wholeheartedly agree.
Yeah, so I'm not saying they should stop doing Netflix adaptations, but I think they need to pick better stories, honestly.
I don't even think it's the stories. I really don't think it's the stories. I think it's that they're being directed and edited and then like put on the TV in this way that just like it just lacks heart. Like it's like a crappy, like it's Netflix has made some really great stuff.
Yes.
And they've also made some absolute crap. And usually when it's crap, it's something that feels hollow and soulless. And I just want less of that. It feels like a made-for-TV movie.
I guess maybe because I didn't love the In the Tall Grass story to begin with. Like, that adaptation just didn't do anything for me. 1922 was fine as far as I remember. I don't remember how much I liked the story itself because that one I read quite a while ago now. But
which one's that one?
1922?
Yeah.
It's about this guy who is living, like, on his farm, and a neighbor wants to buy it. And,
I have seen that one.
There's a cow and a well and a bunch of weird stuff going on. And
I did see that one.
Okay.
That's why I was like, wait, what one?
But it just, like, you watch it and then it's gone out of your mind.
I don't remember anything about it except for the guy was old. Not like old, but like older.
Yeah, they made Thomas Jane look pretty old.
Yeah. And that's literally all I remember. But like the color scheme on it and like the tone of it, I think are much more fitting of the story that it's trying to like tell. Same thing with like In the Tall Grass. Like the tone of it is there. And this one is literally just not. Like it could be any movie. Thumbs down. I want to come back and talk about something that I like. Because I feel like I haven't loved.
We can do something that you like. I mean, I've done everything already up through this, so I don't mind talking about other stuff again. Like, I'll revisit something with you.
But like, do we want to do that? Like, why can't he just like put out something that's better? Well, or somebody make a better adaptation? We
were supposed to get Salem's Lot. It got pushed to next year, and now it no longer has a date.
I know. Bum, bum, bum.
So it might be a minute before there's something. That's why I'm saying we could just revisit something in the meantime.
Yeah. I would be curious to like what happened. Do you know what happened that Stephen King wrote this story? Like, because like I know he's very much like, I mean, he writes every day because that's his job. I respect that a little bit sometimes. I have mixed feelings about it. He's from Maine and that tracks. But like, I don't know, like I feel like a lot of his stories, it's like, oh, like this thing happened and then I sat down and I wrote an entire book. Like my kid almost got hit by a car and I sat down and I wrote Pet Sematary. Like, yeah. And so I'm like, did he have like a bad interaction at like the Apple store? And then he like sat down and like wrote this like story and just like, oh, there you go. Because I've never gotten a feeling from him that he's like a technophobe, like in any way. No, he's like used Zoom to go on podcasts and stuff now. So he's definitely like kind of and he's not keeping with it. He's not anti-social media. He's on social media. He's on Twitter all the time. Exactly. Him and Elon are having a time right now. Oh, God. I hate that man so much. Oh, I know why you kept thinking Ryan Murphy. Because he was originally attached to this adaptation with Blumhouse. But then that changed. That did change. Why did that change? Oh, no, maybe he did still produce it. While she's looking that up, I'm going to tell a little story about something that I did while we were watching this movie. And when the credits roll, typically, I guess I would have expected it to say, based on the story by Stephen King, and instead it said, written and adapted for the screen by John Lee Hancock. And I said, that's not true, because I thought it said based on the story by John Lee Hancock, because I can't read. And this was produced by Blumhouse and Ryan Murphy. So that's probably why you were getting confused. I did it. As you can tell, I did not pay attention to the credits whatsoever. I'm pretty sure I literally, like, this ended, I got up, I went to the bathroom, and I made food. Okay, I knew I had that in my head for some reason. I wasn't crazy. Valid reason. I wasn't crazy. You're not crazy. I have very mixed feelings about Ryan Murphy. That's fine. He's done some stuff that I've really loved, and then he's also done some stuff that I really have just not. I think most of my experience with Ryan Murphy has been American Horror Story. Yeah. And some of the seasons are hit or miss for me. Like, there are seasons of that show that I really love. And then there are seasons of that show I'm like, what is this? I loved them until I just stopped caring. Like, I watched all the way. There's so many of them. Yeah. until I got to like Roanoke. Roanoke was the first season that like I struggled with. I only watched the first like 2 or 3 episodes of it, and then I just like couldn't make it. I just couldn't connect to it story-wise. I think I even had trouble like following it, which I think is just because I wasn't invested. And I just like never went back and never watched it again. But I feel like he says some things occasionally that are very like odd and off-putting to me.
See, I don't pay attention to like what he's said. I just know he's the American Horror Story guy, and that's like...
I'm gay and I'm really into horror stuff. So like the things that he says just like fall in front of me. Everywhere, you know?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I live in the world.
I don't, apparently.
You know what? This was fine.
It was fine.
If you've
I'd
made
probably
it
give it a 2.5.
I think I'm going to sitting at like a 2.
That's not that far off.
I think I'm sitting at a 2.
That's out of 5. Just FYI for everyone. We're going by Letterboxd standards here.
Yes. Just to clarify for everybody. 2 out of 5, I think, is where I'm sitting. I feel like there are better things to watch or to spend your time on. I wish I was coming with a recommendation of what I would watch instead, but I don't know that I have one. I mean, if you're listening to this episode and for some reason you haven't seen Gerald's Game, like that is a much better use of your time. I think similar runtime, still a King adaptation, still a Netflix movie. But yeah, I mean, if you're listening to this and you've made it to this point, you've probably already seen it. And so I'm sorry that I couldn't spare you, but maybe you're one of those people like Deanna and then you're just going to consume it anyway because it's Stephen King.
Yeah, probably.
I think we're wrapping up here.
I think we're done. I forgot how to podcast because we're doing this in person. I was like, what is this? What am I doing? But Becky, thank you for sitting in my living room.
Thank you for having me.